10 neighbors stood along the sidewalk when my daughter closed the passenger door directly in front of me. "Dad, there isn't enough room," she said. Her voice was calm, almost casual, as though she were explaining why an extra suitcase could not fit in the trunk. I looked at the 3 vehicles parked in my driveway. Every seat appeared occupied. Bags were stacked behind the windows, blankets covered the back rows, and my grandchildren were pressed against the glass, waving excitedly. Still, I could see the truth. They had planned the trip without me. My daughter, Claire, gave me an uneasy smile. "You'd probably be more comfortable staying home anyway." Then she lowered her voice. "And you might slow everyone down." For a moment, the entire street became quiet. A neighbor near the mailbox looked away. Another pulled out his phone and stared at the screen, pretending not to notice. Nobody said anything, neither did I. I did not argue. I did not remind Claire that I had paid for the vacation cabin. I did not ask why nobody had saved me a seat. I simply stepped back. "All right," I said. Claire seemed relieved by how easily I accepted it. "Thanks, Dad. We'll be back in a few days." My youngest granddaughter waved through the rear window. "Bye, Grandpa." I lifted my hand and smiled at her. Then the engine started. One by one, the 3 vehicles left my driveway. Claire waved once before the cars turned the corner and disappeared. I stood there alone. My name is Harold Bennett. I was 68 years old, and I had spent more than 3 decades building the home my family had just driven away from. My late wife, Eleanor, and I had raised our children there. We had painted the bedrooms ourselves, repaired the roof after storms, and celebrated every birthday around the old dining table. After Eleanor died, I kept almost everything unchanged. Her favorite blue curtains still hung in the living room. Her garden tools remained in the shed. Even the small crack in the kitchen tile was still there, because she had always joked that it gave the house character. Claire called it Dad's place. That morning, I finally understood what those words meant to her. She did not see it as my home. She saw it as something that would always be available to her. I went inside and closed the door. The silence felt heavier than usual. Family photographs covered the hallway walls. Claire's school pictures, her wedding photograph, images of Eleanor holding our grandchildren. I stared at them for several minutes. Then I walked into my office. At the bottom of an old filing cabinet was a brown folder. I opened it and removed the original property deed. Only one name appeared on it: Harold Bennett. I read it twice. Then I picked up my phone and called a real estate agency. A woman answered. "Bennett Realty. How may I help you?" "My name is Harold Bennett," I said. "I'd like to sell my house." There was a brief pause. "Mr. Bennett, are you certain?" "Yes. How soon would you like us to list it?" I looked through the office window at the empty driveway. "Today." Another pause followed. "Understood. I'll send an agent this morning." After ending the call, I contacted a locksmith. "Please replace every exterior lock," I told him. "The front door, back door, garage entrance, and side gate. Do you need the work done urgently?" Yes. By sunset, the locks had been changed. For the first time in years, Claire could not enter my home whenever she wanted. But selling the house was not an angry decision. It was a decision I should have made long ago. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and made coffee. At 9 o'clock, the real estate agent arrived. Her name was Julia Monroe. She was professional, observant, and careful not to ask too many personal questions. She walked through every room, taking notes. "This property is exceptional," she said. "The corner lot alone will attract attention." "Good." She studied me. "Are you sure you're ready to let it go?" I looked around the living room. "Yes. Where will you live?" "Somewhere smaller." Julia nodded. Before leaving, she handed me a folder. "There's already an interested buyer. He owns several properties nearby and wants to see the house tomorrow." That was fast. He's been searching for a corner property in this neighborhood. Then let him come. At noon, my phone began ringing. Claire's name appeared on the screen. I let the call end. A message arrived. "Dad, we're almost back." I frowned. Almost back from where? Then another message appeared. "The children are exhausted. Please open the gate." I walked to the front window. The driveway was empty. Slowly, I understood. They had returned early because they expected the house to be waiting for them. They expected the bedrooms to be ready. They expected me to welcome them home. I placed my phone on the table and said nothing. 20 minutes later, 3 vehicles appeared at the end of the street. Claire stepped out first. She walked toward the gate. Then she stopped. A large sign stood in the middle of my lawn. "For sale." The color drained from her face. She immediately called me. I answered. "Dad," she said, "why is there a sign in the yard?" "The house is for sale." "What?" "You heard me. But where are we supposed to stay?" I looked through the window at the packed vehicles. Then I answered quietly. "You told me there wasn't room for me." Claire stared at the house. "You can't be serious." Before I could respond, another vehicle turned onto the street. A black SUV stopped beside the curb. The buyer had arrived, and Claire was standing directly beside the gate. The man stepped out of the black SUV carrying a leather portfolio. He was tall, grey-haired, and dressed in a dark jacket. He looked around the property with the calm attention of someone who had already studied every detail. Claire hurried toward him. "Excuse me," she said. "Who are you?" The man turned politely. "My name is Victor Lang. I'm here to view the property." Claire pointed at the house. "This is my father's home." Victor smiled. "Then you must be Mr. Bennett's daughter." "Yes, but there's been a misunderstanding. He isn't selling." From inside the house, I watched her speak as though she still had the authority to decide what happened there. I opened the front door. "There's no misunderstanding," I said. "The house is for sale." Claire turned toward me. "Dad." I walked down the front steps and stopped beside the gate. Behind her, the 3 cars remained packed with luggage. My grandchildren were still sitting inside, watching us through the windows. "You came back early," I said. Claire crossed her arms. "The children were tired." "No, you came back because you needed the house." Her expression tightened. "Can we talk somewhere private?" I looked toward the sidewalk. The same neighbors who had watched her shut the car door in my face were now watching us again. "There's nothing private about this," I replied. She took a slow breath. "I was stressed yesterday. I didn't mean what I said. You told me I would get in the way. I didn't mean it like that." "Then what did you mean?" Claire looked down. She had no answer. Victor cleared his throat. "Mr. Bennett, I can return later if this is a bad time." "No," I said. "Please stay." Claire stared at me. "Why?" "Because you should hear what happens next." Victor opened his portfolio. "We can continue whenever you're ready." "We're continuing now," I told him. Claire's eyes widened. "You can't sell this house." "I can. It belongs to our family." I looked at her carefully. "No, it was your childhood home. That isn't the same thing." Her face became tense. "You're selling everything because I left you behind for one trip." "No." I pointed toward the vehicles. "I'm selling because I finally understand something." "What?" "You don't need a father. You need a house." The words hurt her. I could see it. But they were true. For years, Claire had treated the house as a permanent solution to every problem. When her apartment needed repairs, she moved in. When she and her husband argued, she stayed in the guest room. When money became tight, she brought the children and assumed I would handle everything. I never objected. I paid bills. I fixed broken appliances. I bought groceries. I convinced myself that helping meant never saying no. Victor removed several papers from his folder. "This is our initial offer," he said. He placed the document on the hood of his SUV. Claire looked at the number. Her eyes widened. "That can't be right. It reflects the current value of the property." Victor explained. She turned toward me. You already agreed to this. Not yet. Then don't. I raised an eyebrow. Why shouldn't I? We can work something out. What does that mean? She hesitated. I could pay rent. With what money? Silence. Her husband, Marcus, finally stepped out of the second car. He had remained quiet since they arrived. Mr. Bennett, he said, we didn't realize you were serious. I looked at him. You knew I owned this house. Yes. You knew I lived here. Yes. And you still allowed everyone to leave without me. Marcus glanced at Claire. She stared at the ground. Victor moved a few steps away, giving us space. Claire approached me. Dad, please, what are you asking for? Give us another chance. You had one yesterday. I made a mistake. You did. I was selfish. Yes. Tears appeared in her eyes. I didn't think you would actually sell the house. I nodded. That is exactly the problem. She looked confused. What do you mean? You believed I would accept anything because I'm your father. She covered her face. For a moment I felt no satisfaction. I felt tired. For years I had made sure Claire always had somewhere to go. I had tried to protect her from every difficulty. Then, when I needed one seat in a car, she made me feel like I was a burden. Marcus stepped closer. She's sorry. I looked at him. So am I. Claire lowered her hands. Why are you sorry? Because I taught you that love meant unlimited access. Her eyes filled again. Dad, I raised my hand. This isn't punishment. Then what is it? Consequences. Victor returned. Mr. Bennett, I need to know whether you wish to proceed. I looked at Claire. Then I looked at the house. Memories filled every room, but memories did not require ownership. Finally, I turned back to Victor. Yes, I said. We're proceeding. Claire gasped, but Victor did not close the folder. There is one more matter, he said. He removed another document. What is this? I asked. A revised valuation. I accepted the paper. The number was nearly twice the original offer. Claire leaned forward. Her face went completely still, and for the first time that morning she had nothing to say. Claire stared at the revised offer as though the numbers might change if she looked long enough. Why is the house worth so much? She finally asked. Victor closed his portfolio and looked toward the corner of the property. A large redevelopment project was approved 2 blocks from here, he explained. Your father's land sits at a strategic intersection. The lot is larger than most nearby properties, and it has access from 2 streets. Claire turned to me. You knew about this. I knew the neighborhood was changing. But you didn't tell me. There were many things I didn't tell you. Her expression hardened. Dad, please don't sell. I folded the document. You don't have to beg. I do. She stepped closer. Please, this is our home. No, I said quietly. It was your home when you were growing up. It still feels like home. That feeling doesn't give you ownership. Claire shook her head. I thought family meant you would always be there for me. I will always be your father. Then why are you doing this? Because being there for someone does not mean allowing them to treat you however they want. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Marcus looked toward the house. I understand, he said. Claire turned sharply. You understand what? He sighed. Yesterday, when you told your father there was no room, I should have said something. You agreed with me. I stayed quiet. That's the same thing. No, Marcus replied. It's worse. I knew it was wrong, and I still said nothing. I studied him. He was not making excuses. He was accepting responsibility. That mattered. Before Claire could respond, the rear door of one of the cars opened. My youngest granddaughter, Lily, climbed out. Grandpa. She ran toward me. I knelt and held her tightly. Hi, sweetheart. She wrapped her arms around my neck. Are we in trouble? No. Are you leaving? I looked into her worried eyes. Not from you. She smiled. Claire watched us and began crying again. I stood slowly. You and the children can visit me. Where? She asked. Wherever I live next. She wiped her face. You already know where you're going? Yes. Where? I smiled. I bought a smaller house last year. Her mouth opened. You already own another house? Yes. Marcus looked surprised. You never mentioned that. I didn't see a reason to. Victor smiled politely. Mr. Bennett has been planning his retirement for some time. Claire stared at me. You were preparing to leave. I was preparing for the next stage of my life. And you never told me? No. Why? Because I wanted one place in my life that belonged only to me. The words seemed to reach her. For years, she had assumed she knew everything about me. She knew where I lived. She knew what I owned. She knew I would always be available, but she had never considered that I might have plans she was not included in. Claire looked toward the front door. Can I go inside? I glanced at the new lock. Yes. She waited. I walked to the gate and opened it. This time I said, I open the gate. She nodded. And next time, you knock first. Claire entered slowly. For the first time in many years, she did not walk through the house as though it automatically belonged to her. She moved carefully through the living room. The photographs remained on the walls. Her wedding picture, her childhood school portraits, pictures of Eleanor holding her when she was young. Claire touched one frame. Mom loved this house. I know. She used to sit near that window every morning. She did. Claire wiped her eyes. I didn't realize how much I took for granted. I said nothing. She walked into the kitchen. Do you remember when I broke the window? I smiled. You blamed the dog. She laughed through her tears. You knew it was me. I always knew. For several minutes, we remembered. We talked about birthday cakes, school mornings, and the time Claire tried to paint her bedroom without permission. The house had held all those memories, but memories were not chains. Eventually, Claire looked at me. Dad, I'm sorry. I know. No, I mean it. I believe you. She took a breath. Will you forgive me? I thought carefully. Yes. Her shoulders relaxed. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything returns to the way it was. She nodded. I understand. Marcus entered the kitchen and stood beside her. We'll find another place, he said. You should. Claire looked toward the window. Where are you moving? I'll tell you, after the sale is complete. Why not now? Because I don't want you choosing your next home based on mine. She lowered her eyes. This time she understood. Later that afternoon, Victor returned with the final documents. I signed every page. Claire watched quietly. When I placed the pen on the table, she asked one question. Are you really okay? I looked around the kitchen. Then I looked at her. I will be. She stepped forward and hugged me. I hugged her back. But I made no promises. I did not promise to pay her bills. I did not promise to give her another house. I simply held my daughter and said, I love you. Her voice broke. I love you too, Dad. When she stepped away, I realized something important. I was not closing the door on my daughter. I was only closing the chapter in which she believed my love meant she could take everything for granted. The sale closed 3 weeks later. On the morning I handed over the keys, I walked through the old house one final time. The rooms were empty now. The furniture had been moved, the curtains were gone, and the familiar sounds had disappeared. Yet I did not feel the grief I expected. I felt peaceful. I paused in the living room and remembered Eleanor sitting beside the window with a book in her hands. I pictured Claire running through the hallway as a child. I remembered family dinners, birthday celebrations, and the countless ordinary evenings that had quietly become important memories. Then I placed my hand against the wall. Thank you, I whispered. I was not saying goodbye to my family. I was saying goodbye to a house that had completed its purpose. My new home was smaller and quieter. It had 2 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, and a small garden behind the fence. There was no large driveway and no guest wing. I had chosen it because it was easy to maintain and close to the park, where Eleanor and I used to walk. For the first time in years, every room belonged to my present instead of my past. Claire and Marcus rented an apartment across town. They did not ask me to pay the security deposit. They did not ask me to buy furniture. They did not call when the washing machine stopped working. They solved their own problems. That alone showed me something had changed. A month later, my phone rang. "Dad?" "Yes, Claire." "Can I come over?" "Of course." She arrived alone when I opened the door. She was holding a small white envelope. We sat at the kitchen table. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a handwritten letter. Claire had filled several pages. She wrote about the trip, but she did not stop there. She described the times she had assumed I would pay for something without asking. She remembered every occasion when she treated my help as an obligation instead of a gift. She wrote about moving into my house whenever life became difficult. Then I reached a sentence that made me stop. I didn't understand the difference between having a father and having someone I could depend on financially. I read it again. Then I looked at her. That's honest. I needed to be honest. I folded the letter carefully. "Thank you." Claire smiled. "There's something else." "What?" She took out her phone. "I've started applying for better jobs." I raised an eyebrow. "You already have a job." "I know, but I want one that gives me more stability." "Why?" She looked toward the window. "Because I want to know that I can take care of my family without expecting you to rescue us." I nodded. "That's a good reason." She smiled. Then she asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why didn't you ever tell me how much money you had?" I thought for a moment. "Because I wanted you to learn how to stand without it." Claire nodded slowly. "I think I finally understand." We sat quietly, then she laughed. "What? I miss the old house. So do I." She looked around my smaller kitchen. "But I don't miss who I was when I lived there." Her words stayed with me. Sometimes losing something is not punishment. Sometimes it is the first event that forces a person to grow. Several months passed. Claire found a better job. Marcus began working extra hours and enrolled in a professional training program. They moved into a slightly larger apartment, but they paid for everything themselves. I did not offer money. They did not ask. One evening, Claire invited me to dinner. The address was unfamiliar. When I arrived, Lily opened the door. "Grandpa!" She hugged me tightly. "Mom made your favorite dinner." I smiled. "Then I'm staying for a long time." Claire laughed from the kitchen. "That's the plan." Dinner was simple. There were no expensive decorations and no perfect table settings, but nobody argued. Nobody asked what I owned. Nobody mentioned the money from the house sale. We talked about Lily's school, Marcus's new training, and the vegetables Claire was trying to grow on the apartment balcony. For the first time in years, I felt like a guest who was wanted, not a person expected to solve something. After dinner, Claire returned from the bedroom carrying a small wooden box. "I want you to have this." I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Eleanor was holding Claire as a baby. My wife was smiling at the camera, while tiny Claire slept against her shoulder. I stared at the picture. "Where did you find this?" "It was inside a drawer at the old house." "I thought it was lost." "I kept it safe." Claire sat beside me. "Dad? I used to think you sold the house to punish me." "I didn't. I know that now." She looked down. "You sold it because you finally respected yourself." I did not correct her, because she was right. The day she closed that car door had changed our relationship, not because I sold a property, because I stopped allowing my love to become something others could use without appreciation. I still helped Claire sometimes, but now she asked. Sometimes I said yes, sometimes I said no, and she respected both answers. Before I left that night, she hugged me. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. "I never gave up on you." Then I opened the door. "I just stopped carrying you." Claire nodded, and as I drove home, I realized that love had not become smaller. It had finally become healthier. A year passed after the day Claire closed the car door in my face. During that time, our relationship changed in ways I had not expected. We did not return to the life we had before. We built something different. Claire no longer assumed that my house, my money, or my time automatically belonged to her. When she needed help, she asked. When I offered advice, she listened. And when I said no, she accepted it without anger. That did not mean we never disagreed. We still had difficult conversations. Sometimes she became frustrated. Sometimes I became stubborn. But neither of us used love as a weapon anymore. One Saturday afternoon, Claire called. "Dad, are you busy?" "Not particularly. Would you like to come over for dinner? Is this an invitation or a request for free repairs?" She laughed. "An invitation, I promise. Then I'll be there." When I arrived, Lily opened the door before I could knock. "Grandpa!" She wrapped both arms around me. "Mom made your favorite meal." "Then I hope she made enough." Claire appeared behind her. "Come inside before the food gets cold." The apartment was still modest, but it looked different from the first time I visited. They had added plants near the windows. New family photographs covered one wall. Marcus had built a small bookshelf beside the television. Nothing was expensive. Everything had been earned. That was what made the home feel warm. During dinner, Lily talked about school while Claire described a project at work. Marcus told me he had completed his professional training and received a promotion. "That's wonderful," I said. He smiled. "We're finally getting ahead." Claire looked at him, slowly. "Slowly is still forward," I replied. After we finished eating, Claire brought a small box to the table. "I found something else," she said. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a silver key attached to a faded blue ribbon. I recognized it immediately. It was the original key to the old house. I held it in my hand. "I thought all the keys were returned when the sale closed." "I kept this one," Claire said. "Why?" "I wasn't ready to let go." The room became quiet. Claire looked toward the family photographs. "For years, I thought the house was the reason our family felt safe." I listened. "But now I know the house was only the place where we lived. You were the person who made it feel like home." I looked down at the old key. "You didn't understand that before." "No." She took a deep breath. "I thought your love meant I would always have access to everything you owned." Her words were painful, but honest. "And now?" I asked. "Now I understand that love is not a contract. It doesn't mean you have to give me whatever I want." I placed the key back inside the box. "That took you a long time to learn." "I know." She smiled sadly. "You could have taught me earlier." I could have. I had spent years blaming Claire for expecting too much. But I had also trained her to expect it. Every time I solved a problem she could have handled herself, I taught her to depend on me. Every time I avoided an uncomfortable conversation, I allowed resentment to grow. The responsibility was not hers alone. "I made mistakes too," I told her. Claire looked surprised. "You did?" "Yes." "What mistakes?" "I believed being a good father meant protecting you from every consequence." She nodded. "And now?" "Now I know that helping someone and carrying someone are not the same." Marcus quietly raised his glass. "To learning." We all lifted our glasses. "To learning." Later, Lily showed me a drawing she had made. It showed a small house surrounded by flowers. 3 people stood outside. "Who are they?" I asked. "Me, Mom and Dad, and where is Grandpa?" She pointed toward a 4th figure beside the garden. "You live nearby." I laughed. "Good, I'm glad you didn't forget me." "I would never forget you." When it was time to leave, Claire walked me to the door. "Dad, yes, thank you." "For dinner?" "No." She looked down. "For not giving up on me." I smiled. "I never gave up." "You could have." "I'm your father. I was never going to stop loving you." She wiped her eyes, then, "Why did you sell the house?" I considered the question. "Because loving you did not require me to abandon myself." Claire nodded. "I understand now." She hugged me. This time, the embrace felt different. There was no fear behind it, no expectation, no hidden request. Only love. As I drove home, I thought about the old house. I missed the memories. I missed Eleanor. I missed the sound of children running through the hallway. But I did not miss the person I had become. I no longer believed that love required endless sacrifice. I no longer believed that being needed was the same as being respected. The house had been sold. The locks had been changed. The old chapter had ended. Yet my family remained. It had simply learned a new way to stay together. A few weeks later, Claire visited my home. She brought coffee and sat with me in the garden. Before leaving, she stopped beside the front door. "Dad, yes? Can I come over next weekend?" "Of course," she smiled. "And I'll knock first." I laughed. "Good." She walked toward her car. I watched her leave, remembering the morning she had driven away without me. Back then, I believed I had lost something, but I had not. I had finally stopped confusing sacrifice with love. And Claire had finally learned that a father's love was not measured by the size of his house, the amount of money in his account, or the number of problems he solved. It was measured by the strength to care without losing himself. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is step aside, not because they have stopped caring, but because the person they love must discover that they are capable of standing on their own. And sometimes, when they finally learn to stand, they return. Not because they need a house, but because they want to come home.